All right. I think we finally got live on air.
Okay.
Phew, that was a tough start. So thank you guys for being so patient. I know we started a few minutes late. We had a few technical snafus, but let's dive in to one of the most important topics that we could imagine talking about with you guys, which is how to handle being triggered in your relationship. Probably the area where, if you've ever been in a relationship, you've experienced the most amount of pain, and is often at the real crux of what dissolves relationships to begin with.
Mhm.
So, yeah, let's dive in. Thank you guys. I'm just going to confirm. Can you hear us now? Great. And so just let us know. We're going to start talking, and then when we hear from you, we'll confirm that everyone's hearing us. But either way, this recording should be set and sent to everyone.
Perfect. So just to get to the practical benefits. Yeah, thank you, Mary Jo.
Yay! Mary Jo said she can hear us.
The practical benefits that you'll get from the rest of this webinar is first of all, like when you get triggered, you really aren't yourself. You lose all your important faculties. You literally become a crazy person when you're triggered, even if you
Or
think
maybe like five.
if you
You're
think
like a
you
5-year-old.
handle trigger well, whether you're 3 or 5 or 7, 13, however, bratty, mopey or angry, however you handle it, even if you think you handle it well, it's probably because you've become accustomed to those states, and they may not bother you, but that doesn't mean they don't bother the people around you. It also doesn't mean that you have your functioning on board, so you're actually not thinking clearly, which we'll go into more detail later. So what you'll learn here is how to come back so that you stop being that crazy person, that you stop being that too young person, because in a sexual relationship, you really don't want to be in there with a 3-year-old. You want to be in there with a fully grown adult. And so you learn how to come back from being triggered as fast as possible. And you're going to learn the things that you are doing that you might think are helping, but actually might be hurting in those situations. And we're going to open up a whole new world to you tonight, because what we've discovered is that there are two main ways of handling being triggered, and handling what you do next in a relationship. And um, if you have one of those ways as your kind of native way of being, usually you can't even see the other behavior. And just like so many other things, if you're one way, you tend to attract a partner that's another way, so that you can be kind of the complete picture. Um,
Which can be both maddening, but be also the source of your biggest learning and
yeah,
your way out of triggers.
yeah.
I'm so thankful that him and I are kind of polar opposites in how we deal with trigger, because I don't know that we would have figured out what we're about to show you had we been the same.
Absolutely not. I mean, I
Yeah.
could say for me, I never would have seen the other side of the coin, and I would. It's equivalent of like living on a flat planet where you don't realize the world is round. You don't realize the whole picture of what's happening. I never would have had that if I was with someone who was like me, which in my most trigger states, that's all I was asking for. I was praying for that, and thank God that when you're triggered, your prayers are never answered.
So today we're going to go through what we would call like the three must do's of healthy conflict. We're not presupposing that you're going to be in a relationship that has no conflict in it. In fact, our frame on conflict, that which we really encourage you to consider, is that the conflict that you have in your relationship is really the source of your transformation and growth. It's basically your line of evolution that you're seeing played out faithfully by your partner as you get triggered and in conflict. So we've learned to see the conflicts that come up in our relationship and our triggers as something that we're grateful for, because it really does show us who we want to be, who we need to be, and who we're evolving to become. And so I hope that you, if you take anything from this call, is to bring some gratitude for your partner's ability to have that kind of mirrored to you, because they're basically showing you the map of your own evolution. Should you choose to look at that in that way and see that map.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I want to say a little bit about why we're doing this. Some of you know us as teachers and coaches and mentors in the realm of entrepreneurship, even in the realm of personal development. And For years it's been a dream of Brian and I's, I think, to come together on this topic of love. And I've really, really realized that in my relationship with Brian, we've learned how to kind of brick by brick build what to us feels like an evolutionary relationship. And we've been asked by people in our tribe for years, who we've been coaching formally and informally, to share some of what we've learned through the process of dealing with all the things that all of you deal with. We're not
Mm,
immune.
mm,
It's just our disposition to be teachers of it, to evolve through it, that has helped us to figure it out. And it's my belief that triggers can be, done in a moment, or done in a weekend, and that it can be taught. And what I'm always shocked by is that we'll spend all of our formal education, including most of our college, if you did that, on learning math and science and history and every other topic you can think of. But isn't it amazing that we don't spend any time being taught how to relate? And I guess Brian and I want to help be a voice in teaching people how to relate in that
mm,
way, and to correct that, and to show you how investing in learning about your relationship, investing in your love and relationship, and how those interactions go, is probably the highest leverage thing you can do to affect the quality of your life. I think it's higher leverage than any money you could spend on any success strategy or business strategy. In fact, over the years, as we were teaching people, entrepreneurship and success, and their own personal development, we often had people come to us after major successes, making all sorts of new money, totally changing tracks in their lives, feeling grateful for all of that, but talking to us about the thing that was really the most impactful, which is the changes that they saw themselves make with respect to how they treated other people and how their relationships looked. So this, to us, is the highest leverage conversation you can be in, and an area that we all need to learn more about and invest more in. So that's why we're doing
mhm.
this. That's like some of like why it's near and dear to our heart, to do this.
Yeah, and uh, outside influences really do shortcut your progress. When we were teaching these courses, these masterminds, people were paying $20,000, $25,000 to spend a year with us, and many of them would make multiples on their income and grow their businesses. But the reason they kept coming back to us saying the number one thing that they got, which is something they never thought they would get from a business course, was a new roadmap on how to love. It's because it's an error to think that your love relationship only contains two people, because it affects everything about how you are, your mood, how you interact with everyone else, the ways your friends and your family interact with you. So all of that ecosystem is an influence over what's going on for you and what's going on in that relationship. And if you insert into that ecosystem the right influences, the right mentorship, the right ideas, it can change. It can change really everything.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it can be taught. It's just a matter of learning these kind of, evolutionary frameworks,
yeah.
learning these new conversations and practices. And if you are exposed to things like this, it's how smart people, evolved people, can still have trouble in love because they haven't been taught how to do it, how to have a functional, healthy
Mhm.
relationship. And if anything that we've learned over the last several years is that it can be taught. In fact, we can and have seen incredible, life changing, differences in people that are taking on some of these practices. So we're excited to share some of these with you
Mhm.
as we dive in today.
And what I really want you to walk away with is a commitment to um, notice yourself, to see the bigger picture, which we're going to show you how to do that on this call. Notice yourself, see the bigger picture, and really invest in laying the groundwork so that your automatic responses when you get triggered start to be the kinds of responses that build the relationship and the life that you want, instead of your automatic responses being the ones that destroy or degrade those relationships. And that's what we want to put you on the path tonight to do. I just can't imagine a better investment of your time than in your relationships. I'm really grateful that you're taking this time out, because investing in your relationship, I think, is the most important thing you can do to improve the quality of your life.
Mhm. So we're going to give you three practices and kind of some step by steps on how to handle being triggered in your relationship. So grab a pen and paper, take some notes, write down these three steps. Notice which one is more native to you. Like Bryan said, there's going to be two practices. One of you in your partnerships, if you're in relationships right now, is likely good at one of them, and the other, if the hidden symmetry is at play in your relationship, is likely good at the opposite. So stay tuned for that. And, I just want to say one last thing because um, one of the things that really called me to this work, like really meant a lot to me to do this, is one, how congruent I feel in teaching it because of how beautiful our partnership is and how often we get recognized for our relationship. Often people say that, people want to have a relationship that looks like ours. So finally, like we're not trying to teach something like so many people try sometimes when they aren't already living it. So just we are so living everything that we're about to teach you.
Mm,
And our relationship is one of the things I'm the most proud
mm,
of everything I've ever done. And I'm proud of a
mm,
lot of things.
mm,
I'm really proud of our relationship. Um, but secondarily, I learned this from the Tamarin people, which I've just been learning more and more about, and they're an intentional community. So I just want to do a hats off to them, and from them I learned this. They consider themselves peace activists and love activists, and they said this. They said that we cannot live in a world without war until we heal the war between the sexes, that there's a divide between the masculine and feminine, and there's even a divide between us as individuals. And until we start healing that divide, healing that war that we're at, we're going to replicate that trigger, replicate the violence, replicate all of the things that have us dissolve our partnerships and relationships across every aspect of humanity. And so think of your work in your relationship as one small but vitally important step to living in a world that thrives and works for everyone. I really want you to take it that seriously. If you're at war with your partner in any way, we have no prayer of creating a harmonious world, and that's exactly what we're about. That's what we need to be doing right now. So, without further ado, let's dive in. So now's the time. Close other windows. Really start paying attention. Write down some of your notes about this three-step process for how to handle trigger. And at the end, we've got something really special. So if you'll listen to the end, we've got a gift worth around $1,000. So stay in, and we're going to give you a special code that you'll have to hear because it's a special thing that we're gonna give you. So you'll have to write it down. So keep that pen handy, and we'll give that to you. And it's really an invitation for you to just dive in deeper with us. And so we've got that as a special gift. So let's start. You want to
So
begin?
yeah, I want to tell you guys a story. These are the kind of stories you don't normally hear. They're the inner workings, the inner happenings of other people's relationships, and you don't normally get to hear this stuff. But um, we're gonna open the kimono, and I just want to let you in, even though the story might be a little bit embarrassing. So, um, uh, you know, I don't know, Jennifer and I had been together for a number of years, and I started to notice that there was one aspect of our relationship that felt really out of balance, and I was kind of getting grumpy about it being, out of balance. It was, in my view, not out of balance in my favor. It was out of balance and not in my favor, and so I was getting kind of grumpy, and the way that I felt like it was out of balance was the way that we would resolve conflicts, and that you know um, we'd be triggered at whether Jennifer would get upset, or maybe I would get upset and pretend I wasn't, and then Jennifer would get upset.
I
Very
usually didn't pretend I wasn't. You
no,
you
Jennifer,
kind of knew when I was upset.
yes, I tend to, being upset is not really okay with me in some worlds, so I tend to more like have shifty Heidi behavior around it, but
Yeah.
Jennifer more is comfortable with expressing her upset, so it would look like her being upset and me kind of being defensive. And then I would get really apologetic, and I would start to do the process of resolving the conflict, and sort of trying to take care of her and her situation, what she needed, and
And
yeah, I
apologize.
apologize, and really drive the drive the process or captain the ship back to a place where we're both happy and it feels good again. And it felt like it was almost all the time that it was me driving, and the guy started was like, hey, when's the time when she's going to drive, when I can just be upset and she's going to say sorry and she's going to like drop it first or get off it first, and I'm going to, and I started to loop on that thing that was out of balance for me. And um and uh I have this belief, which is there's no such thing as a relationship out of balance that stays together. It's kind of like just physics. If a relationship is cogent, if it's holding together, then it has to be in balance.
Yeah, in fact, just because we've researched some of the world's leading experts on relationship just throughout the years, not only in our own laboratory, but just following what some of the other experts in. And there's a book called Love's Hidden Symmetry by Bert Hellinger. Incredible work. And this idea that in your relationship there's always symmetry. So anytime you feel an out of balance, there's always an equal and opposite force holding the other end. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in relationship. The relationship would literally fall apart, and it's that symmetry that keeps you in relationship. So,
Yeah.
I love that you bring this up.
Yeah. And I just thought that this was the one exception to that
Right,
rule,
right.
where physics just wasn't applying here because clearly this was out of balance. Um, and and I would feel noble about it, and then I'd feel hurt about it, and anyway, we went through several iterations, but um,
And he was right.
yeah.
I didn't often apologize. It was him leading the charge when there was upset, trying to restore us back to a better state.
Hmm.
So, we're opening the kimono here about
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
the kind of the ins and outs of our relationship, but it's in service
Yeah.
to this. So keep going.
Sure. So then uh, I noticed that the topic of the fights that we were getting into, fights is probably a strong word. They were they were much more marked by kind of sadness and tears and frustration and like, how could you not get how this feels to me? It was like that. It wasn't so much fighting, but there was occasionally that too. Anyway, I noticed that the topic started to be about how it was just the same topic over and over, and it was a couple of ways that Jennifer was wanting me to show up, and just like say be sensitive, hear her, be sensitive to what she's feeling.
Want to be listened to. Wanted you to
Yeah,
be present, more present
more
with
present.
me, more connected.
Yeah,
See if you women especially relate to
right.
that. Wanting your man to be more present and be more connected to
Yeah.
your feelings. And
I married the one woman who wants me, a man, to be
strange, I
more
know.
present. I don't know how I found you. Yeah, everyone else. But no, even though it's a common, masculine feminine dynamic, at the conclusion of each one of these episodes, I would always make a big promise to be more present, and would put appropriate, in my mind, effort into doing that. Um, but it was the repetition of that question. Um, and I kind of said, I was complaining about how that felt because I didn't like being picked on for the same thing again and again. And I wanted to turn it around. It was like, well, how come, you know, whatever, you aren't, you're doing the same thing over and over again too, or something. I can't remember. It had some kind of petty comeback. And um, I think you said something like, well, because I'm actually working on that thing or something, and, and I realized uh, that there were two parts um, to actually correcting for, or to transmuting or transferring a conflict into evolution. And I only had been paying attention to the one part. The first part is to resolve the state, to resolve the break in partnership, so you can get back to feeling as though you're on the same page and feeling the flow of love. And the flow of love never stops, but we pretend it does. So getting that resolution to like, okay, there's not a problem in this space right now. But then there's the second part, which is actually to repair the the break, to repair the thing that caused the conflict in the first place. And I my whole life had only been focused on the resolution, on repairing the state. And
And I basically only focused on the repair because I didn't care about the apology one bit. You know, we tend to devalue the part that we're not good at. It's like, I don't care if he apologizes. I just want it to be different. How many of you have said that to your to your partners? I just want it to be different. And for Bryan, he's like, I just want you to
I just
apologize.
wanted to feel good.
Yeah, I just want it to feel
I
good.
want it to be like
Yeah.
yummy between us.
Yeah.
Can we get back to where it's fun and yummy and we're laughing, and let's do that.
So write down these for a minute before we go even farther. It's, you know, two of the three aspects or must do's of healthy conflict. The first is resolution, and the second is repair. Those are very distinct processes.
Yeah.
Resolving and repairing, right? Resolving is like that return to the state of love and care and support. And in that, resolution is often an apology, but
Yeah.
it's really that restoration of love, and where it's allowed to flow.
Yeah.
Right. But you're not done that then, because what was happening in our relationship is he kept apologizing for the same thing over
Yeah.
and over, and it was driving me batty. I was like,
Yeah.
why don't you just fix it?
Well, it
And so
wasn't.
every time it would come up, I would get meaner and harsher and harsher. And he, of course, and I wasn't ever copying to that I was being the harsh one
Yeah. And it
and
wasn't
repairing
just.
my harshness. I only just wanted him to repair the issue, and I was justified, you know, in being miffed.
It wasn't just our relationship either, because
Yeah.
I realized that
Yeah.
I had been doing that my whole life. That I actually specialized in resolution.
Yeah.
And Jennifer had specialized in
In
repair.
repair.
So
Yeah.
she was frankly pretty miserable at the resolution part. So if she was trying to lead like us feeling yummy again, she might throw in an insult, or like,
I couldn't quite do it all the way at first. I had to like
it's
throw
like
in the
it's
little
like
last word.
yeah, well, because until she felt like confident it was going to change in the future, she couldn't let go of
Oh, yeah.
making sure that it didn't feel good in the moment. From sort of the tribe of people who are good at repair. If what you care about is that it's different in the future, whether it feels good right now is something you can sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
I came from the other tribe, the tribe of resolution, where as long as you could make it feel good right now, then whether you changed your behavior in the future, I mean, you could have good intentions, but and you want to evolve, but basically at your own pace. Because I realized the better I got at resolution, the less I actually had integrity around my repair commitments. And
Well, think about how it would benefit you to get good at the
yeah,
resolution. If you weren't repairing, you were going to have to be apologizing and
yeah,
resolving over and over and
I had
over.
lots of practice. Yeah.
Yeah, so he got a lot of
Uh,
practice.
and so that's where we said one of the things you'd get is to realize how something you might be thinking that you're doing right is actually hurting. Um, if you've specialized like I had in resolution and getting the state back, that's actually a great skill, and both partners need
Yeah.
to have it.
You can't omit one of these two steps, by the way. There's like repair isn't superior to
Yeah.
resolution, and resolution isn't superior to repair. An evolutionary relationship is doing both of these things well.
Yeah.
And hopefully you're learning from your partner, like I did from Bryan and like he has with me, how to do each one. But we're going to take you through some steps
Yeah.
of how to do it.
But
Yeah, but go ahead. I interrupted.
no,
Go
it's
ahead.
okay. So it's if you specialize like I had in only resolution and not repair, you you can actually be letting yourself off the hook, and that's how you could do something that was originally designed to be good, and you thought you were doing a good thing for the relationship, but you're actually cushioning yourself against the impacts of not repairing, because you can be so good at basically, if you can talk yourself out of trouble, you're going to get into more trouble than if you can't. So, so then once I realized, oh crap, there's these whole two worlds, resolution and repair, and Jennifer's actually one of the greatest geniuses I've ever seen at repair. And her apparent inability in the area of resolution was matched by her super ability.
Symmetrically matched,
Yeah.
just like we said, those hidden
Yeah, it's
symmetries.
totally
And
in balance.
his genius in the resolution and ability to do something that is, for me, was Herculean, which is to drop the need to be right, to drop the need to make a point, to drop the need to make anybody be different in terms of their behavior, and he could just drop that in an instant, which felt just
Yeah.
impossible to me. um and instead just like restore love, like restore the state. And that is a genius and beautiful ability, that you were really developed at,
Yeah.
that I always marveled at secretly. Even as I was saying that repair was what I cared about,
Yeah.
underneath I was going, wow, how do I learn how to do that? Because
Yeah.
that's a big missing in my emotional IQ. And it could be a big missing in your IQ, one of these two. But
Yeah.
it was a real nice eye opener for me to even just to see this. We didn't even have these distinctions about resolution and repair for years until we just discovered it after having
Yeah.
the recurring fight, the
Yeah.
trigger, which for many of you, you'll notice that your triggers are not an infinite number of fights. You probably have created some really deep grooves in a few fights, or a few conflicts that have maybe slightly different scenarios, but it's basically about the same thing over and over again. So
So the first thing is
yeah, go ahead.
to notice that these two things exist: resolution and repair, and that probably, if you're in a partnership with it's had any duration at all, you notice that one of you is specializing in one and the other is specializing in the other, and rather than punishing each other for not being good at the one that you specialize in, that you can actually take an attitude of appreciation. And just like one of you might specialize in, I don't know, paying the bills or cooking or cleaning or any of the other ways that you negotiate your life together, you can specialize in the repair and the resolution, and really appreciate the other for their genius and learn from them. And now, my attitude about repair, instead of avoiding it, is to really learn from Jennifer. So here's how, um, to resolve. There are basically three steps to the resolution part. And again, resolution is you're triggered, your partner's probably triggered, the train's going off the rails, and this is how you bring it back to a high vibration state so that your faculties can return. And the first step is to breathe and stand down, because you cannot win an argument.
Mm, I think you ought to say that again.
Yeah, you cannot win an argument. There's no way to win. Um, you can't win an argument because when you're in an argument, you're at a very what we call low vibration state. And as my 11-year-old son Spencer observes, truth is the same vibration as excitement, or which means if you're not really happy, if you're not even ecstatic, then you don't have access to truth. Which means when you're in an argument, the only way to have an argument is to conceal the counter argument, which means you're not actually in contact with truth, which means you can't win. Any kind of win that you're going to have in an argument is going to be a loss in the long term. And if you've ever really won an argument with someone you love, you felt that.
Mhm.
So I just like, I immediately get defensive and I start fighting for my point of view, and then I'm right, and I want to be seen as better than I whatever she's saying I'm mediocre, and I want to say be seen as awesome. And so no, this is not, but, and I can kind of hear it in my voice and I can feel it in my body. And the first thing I do is just breathe and stand down and realize I'm not going to win, so I should stop trying to win the argument right there and just
Mm,
stand down. And then, so that's what you don't put your attention on. um, it, then I have some realizations in that moment. I'm like, okay, everything I'm defending when I'm in an argument, everything I want to defend is not a part of myself that I'm proud or wish to invest in. So, if Jennifer's, I don't know, upset because I forgot to do something important, then if I'm defending, no, 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 well, it wasn't that I forgot, it's that I didn't have time. What I'm defending is that I'm too busy, can't manage my time, like have too much on my plate, aren't really well composed. I'm actually I'm fighting for a story which I don't really even want to
mhm.
be true.
Right,
You
a
know,
more limited version of yourself,
yeah,
or a
exactly.
state of being that's not the one you want to really be.
So
Mhm.
just see for yourselves, if you've ever been defensive, what you're actually defending is a version of yourself you don't want to live into. You never get defensive about being an infinite source of love. You don't go, no, no, I'm an infinite source of love. It just never comes out like that. It's what you're always defending is like some limited, small part that you really don't want to be true, and that you don't doesn't have to be true. In fact, your partner doesn't believe it's true, which is why you feel like you need to defend it. And then I also think, okay, state, how it feels, trumps content in terms of getting to the truth. If we're going to get to the truth, arguing your point is not going to work, but creating a state where you're connected and partnered and relaxed actually has a chance of getting to the truth. Um,
This was such a revelation when I saw him doing this. I mean, I've been on a quest for the last year and a half to master um, being in a resonant field with the state, like having state be the most important thing in my life. Like I've learned so much from Bryan here, just even in my leadership. So just, like I said, this is a high leverage conversation. If you become the kind of collaborator, whoever when you're collaborating with more than one person and you're paying as much, if not more, attention to the state of the collaborators, the people that you're working with, as you do the content, the plan, then you're going to create an environment that maximizes everyone's development, where everyone feels more capable, more confident, more their highest and best selves, more resourced, more wise, more creative.
mhm,
And that only comes when you become someone who understands state to the degree that Bryan already understood natively, but is something I've since learned
mhm,
from him and have now incorporated in how I lead. So
mhm,
these conversations really work their way in everything,
mhm,
because how you do anything is how you do everything. Is another really important presupposition you might write down: is how you do anything is how you do everything. And so the state that you are fighting for is likely a state that you continue to fight for, or hold, in many, many contexts, with your friends, with your loved ones, with your kids, with your family, and so on. So
So that's step one: is breathe, stand down. You can't win an argument. Um, so there I am. I'm breathing. I'm standing down. I'm realizing I'm not going to win. By this time, Jennifer's also probably triggered, and she might
mhm,
be saying things that are triggering for me that I disagree with. Now, she's in a low vibration state, so
yeah,
she doesn't have access to truth there either. But trying to evaluate whether she's being right or not and why she's wrong,
just feeds the argument,
yeah, that's just, we're just gonna,
escalates.
yeah, escalate, particularly with someone who doesn't historically value resolution. That's We're just gonna escalate
It's
into,
like, you want to
yeah,
escalate?
yeah.
That's fine by me.
That's right,
Let
exactly.
me pull out the bigger gun.
That's right.
Remember last time when you did this?
So I'm like, okay, well, that's I'm not going to win.
Um,
And it's not just that men don't win arguments with women, which is also true, because women's emotional capacity is so much greater than men's. We really
um,
need to be learning from them about this.
mm,
Um, it's not just that. And it's not just that the resolver types can't win an argument against the repair types, although that also probably is true. It's that no one wins an argument, and then no one can win. So the second thing is
it's a good step.
to notice that my perception of what's happening is probably completely screwed up. And if you're triggered, if you're not happy, there's a guarantee that you are seeing a distortion. I mean, it's almost like looking at the world through a piece of glass where there's a bubble in the glass that makes everything on that location of the bubble seem much larger than it really is. Um, we all have sensitivities uh, uh, in our life. We all have things that we're overly sensitive to. We've been sensitized to, either deliberately or because of our upbringing or because of past relationships or what have. It doesn't matter why. We all have sensitivities. Your sensitivities are not the same as your partner's, and you probably can notice if over time, like, oh, I have a sensitivity about my creative work being criticized at a certain stage, like when it's really early. And I guess a lot of people have a similar sensitivity, but I have a really big sensitivity about that. So if I feel like my creative work is being criticized at an early stage, you could say to me, particularly if I valued your opinion, you could say, this isn't the best I've seen, and I will hear, this is utter dog shit, and you probably should just go crawl in a hole and die. And so, and
Exaggeration, yeah.
we these are how the sensitivities work. It's kind of called catastrophizing, but that's how sensitivities work. Is you actually hear it like the partner said. And we would be in fights in the early days where I would say something like, but then, well, I don't really appreciate that you called me a bad boyfriend. And she said, I didn't
I
call you
didn't say that.
a
Yeah.
bad boyfriend.
I just wanted you to listen.
I said you didn't
Yeah,
care
yeah.
about what I felt.
Yeah.
But to me, anyone who doesn't care what their girlfriend felt is a bad boyfriend. So I made that connection and thought she said it. Because of my sensitivity, I really want to be a good partner and a good lover and a good boyfriend and a good husband to Jennifer now. And so anything that felt like it wasn't that, super sensitive to. So step two is to recognize your sensitivity. You can even advertise your sensitivity. So, for example, I notice if I'm getting a little bit triggered, I might say to Jennifer, hey Jennifer, just so you know, in this part of the conversation, I'm really, really sensitive to anything that sounds like I'm being not good enough for you. So I'm just super sensitive. Anything that sounds even remotely like that, I'm going to blow out of proportion in my hearing of it. And so,
Yeah, and when I hear that, like, all my guards kind of stand down, and I just want to go, oh, got it. So he's copying to his sensitivity. Like, maybe I could be more sensitive in how I'm delivering whatever message that feels so important for me to deliver in
yeah,
that moment. Most people don't cop to these
they
things.
blame their partner
They
for
get
their sensitive.
defensive
Yeah,
and they're acting that way, but they're not
yeah,
saying it. And when you say it, it kind of diffuses it, because
yeah,
then I'm like, oh, now I'm on his team and not wanting to oversensitize him in this way. So it's a really
yeah.
powerful way to restore, and it's a way of being really accountable. When he says that to me, he doesn't make me wrong for what I'm upset about
No,
or sad about. He just says, wow, this is an area where I notice I'm really sensitive. So I just want you to keep that in
yeah.
mind.
And even if she says in that moment, well, I think you are being a bad boyfriend in this case, in this one situation, or even if she isn't then taking my kind of advertising and my sensitivity into account, which most of the time she does, but occasionally, if she's really triggered, she might not. Just because I've advertised it though, I'm now hearing her at, more accurately and not quite through that same bubble, and I'm not projecting my sensitivity on my partner, thinking that they're the ones that are doing it. So,
Mhm.
the thing that is totally crazy making about a love partnership is, if you think that your partner's head is too small and they think it's that the way you see it is too big, or everyone you think everyone else's is too big, you'll never settle who's right about that, because there's only the 2 points of view, and probably you're both right. So it's best to just cop to the sensitivities. The third step is to ask for what you want. So this was huge.
Mhm.
We'd be in an argument, and I would feel like anything I said that was true for me would sound defensive. Jennifer would say, whatever, you did this bad thing and I'm unhappy. And because neither of us we're in an argument, we're both triggered, neither of us has access to truth. There might be exaggeration in what she said, or she might not quite get it right.
You never take out the garbage. How come
Yeah,
you never do that?
it's
And
been
always
six
having their,
weeks,
their mind
since
read, right?
whatever it is. It's
And if
been
it hadn't been 6 weeks, he could say, that's not
If it
true.
was 3 weeks instead of
Yeah.
six, I'd be like, no, wait a minute, it's been 3 weeks, and by the way, one of those weeks we were away.
Why are you being defensive?
And
You hardly ever do this. Why are you arguing? Like,
now
what
we're
happened?
now we're doing the trigger dance and
Yeah.
into the content.
Yeah.
Obviously, what's relevant is that she's not feeling the support she wants in that moment, which is what we really should be talking about. So rather than try to fight with her about what's true and not true from a place where neither of us have access to that, uh, I used to feel like I was caught between this choice where I had to either swallow what was true for me and kind of agree with her story to dissolve the conflict, uh, or defend for my right, for what was true, for my truth, stand for my truth, but have a huge break in intimacy and rapport, and basically disrupt the resolution process. And I used to think basically I had no win. Either I sold out my integrity or I sold out my value of love, and that felt like a real bind. The thing that unlocked that bind for me was realizing that I could just, rather than fight for any of that, I could just ask for what I want. And so she might say, blah blah blah, 6 weeks, you haven't done the thing, and you didn't, because you didn't care enough about me to make sure that you did it.
Hmm.
And I could say something like, wow, well, first of all, I really want to be in a place where what you feel about my contributions is gratitude. and that and that you notice the things I have done more than the things I haven't. I want that. I also want it to be a way where if you're sad because something didn't get done that is valuable to you, I really want it to be where you can come to me with that with a kind of a soft sadness first before it gets to the point in you where you're so upset that it feels like this. Like I really yearn for a way for us to communicate about these kinds of things that isn't so scary for me or isn't so confronting for me.
And so just pause for a minute. As you're listening to him, like just imagine you're on the other side of someone speaking like that to you. It's really hard to want to launch another volley at someone speaking like that. You know, he's not, there's no denial of the situation. It's just, this is how I want us to resolve things. Here's how I want us to talk to each other. Here's how I want us to approach this. And it's like an invitation to be a better version of myself.
Yeah,
And we've stopped doing the escalations that most people do when they're triggered, and he started just asking for what he wants and asking for the state to change and the quality of how we're talking about it to change. You know, he's not trying to argue with who he said, she said. It's really about the quality of the state in which we're having the conversation. See, this is his genius: is how do we restore the state? It's like, can we talk about this in a way where I don't feel so attacked, where you could bring your softness first,
yeah.
right? And it's like, no, sorry, I'm not going to do that for you. Like, it's really
Well,
hard to kind of stay angry in that moment, and it,
well,
it really does start to relax the system. And he's embodying, as he's doing that, the state he wants us both to be in,
yeah,
right? So I can either stay way out of rapport with him, or I can even unconsciously start to get more and more in rapport,
yeah,
because ultimately we don't want to be in that fight or flight mode, which is where we are when we're triggered. We're unresourced. We actually want the system to go back to equilibrium, go back to its resting state. So an invitation like that is really beautiful. So asking for what you want, asking for how you want the conversation to go down, is just a genius step. I love the way Bryan does it. He's
it,
really beautiful here.
it immediately releases the tension in my chest that's caused between feeling like I'm bound between those two things, like integrity and love. And it just really just saying what I want. She doesn't have to have any response to it. In fact, one of the first times I tried it and like really field tested it, we were in a situation and I was really upset and I didn't feel like Jennifer was trusting me,
Hmm.
and she's basically, it felt like an inquisition, like, well, why did you do this, why did you do this, and I was like, and and I said, Jennifer, I really want you to trust me that I'm making good decisions here and that I've got our best interest in mind when I'm making them. And she said, I don't trust you about that right now. And that, you know,
Even though it wasn't the
it,
answer
it
he
was
wanted.
so relaxing for her and for me,
Yeah.
because that was the issue. I
Hmm.
wanted to be trusted and she wasn't trusting. And I could understand some of the reasons why she might not trust me, but we didn't have to argue about that. We both wanted her to trust me. We both knew she wasn't. And we could just sit and be with how it actually was. And I was totally released in my tension because I had said what was true for me, but
Hmm.
in a way that wasn't accusational or
Hmm.
anything like that. So those are the three steps. Um, the first thing you want to do is just stand down. You can't win. So stop trying to win and breathe. Realize that anything that you're going to defend is not a part of yourself that you want to
And
defend.
we call this self-regulation.
Yeah.
There's a really important concept that
Yeah.
you actually don't have to be um, dragged. Your state doesn't have to be tied directly to another person, so that you can't actually regulate your own state.
Yeah.
You actually have that off ramp. All of you, all of us have that off ramp to self regulate. So if our partner is angry or sad, we don't have to fall into that cave with them. We can actually be one of the people that helps bring the other partner out. And that becomes one of those things that's important. So just really get the
Yeah.
idea that the breathe and stand down is your opportunity to do a little bit of self-regulation.
Yeah.
This is a concept that we've talked about a lot with our good friends Annie and Eben.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, breathe, stand down, can't win. Step two, notice the sensitivities that a lot of what's happening is actually blown out of proportion by your own sensitivities. You can even advertise them. And then step three, ask for what you want. And the most powerful way you can actually resolve the initial conflict and get you back to the state of love. Did we lose an earring?
We did.
Okay, well,
Keep going.
that's fine. Uh, we're so once you are back at that state, though, this is where the resolvers like me think we're done, and this is where the repair people like Jennifer
This is where
realize
it
we're
starts.
getting started. Exactly. So why don't you talk a little bit about repair and how you do it?
Yeah, so let's talk about the second must do of healthy conflict or healthy kind of handling of triggers, right? And so, Bryan, again, genius at resolution and someone I've learned deeply from, and now I'm just gaining a lot of skill in that area. But my native skill was really more in the repair. You might get in an argument with me. I may or may not apologize to you, but I guarantee you that if there was a way that I was being that I wasn't proud of, I was going to take a real hard look at it and work to have that be the last time that you ever had that hurt or complaint about me. So let's talk about the three steps of repair. It's just symmetric. We're trying to be symmetric, just like he just went through the three steps of resolution. So, the first thing I do when I'm noticing things like triggers come up, I'm looking for my own cause in the matter, right? So if and I do this exercise. So just imagine this for a moment, imagine something that you get triggered about. It can be anything big or small. It doesn't have to be the thing that always triggers you, just anything that triggers you. And just notice how you behave, how you respond, react in that moment of trigger, right? So sometimes when I'm wanting Bryan to listen to me more, I'll say, "Why aren't you listening to me?" And I notice the way I'm getting whiny, I'm being blamey, I'm accusing him, I'm getting resentful, like all of these things that I don't want to be, right? I don't want to be blamey and resentful and whiny and act like a 5-year-old and lose all my emotional IQ in that moment. So I fade out everything but my reaction. So there you are being triggered. Doesn't matter what the situation is. You can think it's all about them and all their fault and everything they did wrong, but go ahead and fade them out. Fade everything about the situation and just put the video camera on you. And then watch yourself with that video camera. And as you notice how you're acting, your mannerisms, your kind of the emotions that you're feeling, the ways that you're communicating, just take a look at that if you're willing. And it's an eyes open process. You just watch yourself. And we often justify our behavior by putting it in the context of worse behavior by others. So resist the urge to think, well, I may be being, blamey, but he's the worst one because
Way more blamey.
yeah,
Oh
because
my God.
he's not listening to me. And that's way worse than being angry at someone not listening. I mean, he started it,
Yeah.
right? He's the one that started this behavior that nobody would want to feel like their partner wasn't listening to them. And by the way, Bryan listens to me beautifully. So I'm just using this as an example, although we have had this recurring fight. So
Until I
any
started working on repair. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and then it's beautiful. So I'm saying that this stuff works because we actually use all of this. But anyway, so fade out everything but your own reaction, and then ask yourself, do I want to be that way? Regardless of the circumstance, is that a way of reacting and responding and behaving that I want to be in the world? And as our friend Annie would say, she'd say, are you clapping for that behavior in the movie theater as you're watching your life? There you are in the movie theater watching the scene, and are you giving yourself a standing ovation going, yeah, that was awesome, right? And if you're not, then how could you play that out, right? And that's going to be some in some of the next steps. I'll tell you about, like, how do you figure out how to play that movie in the right way? But you know are you clapping for your behavior, and are all your values represented, right? So I notice if, like, let's say I'm being triggered and I'm sad and I'm getting small, or I'm blaming or feeling resent, um I have values of like self-expression and compassion and emotional IQ and truth. And if those values aren't being represented and I say those are important to me, then that's a clue that this is something I need to look at. So, step one is looking for your own cause in the matter. How is your behavior something that you would want to repair or do differently, regardless of the circumstance? Right. So, that's step one, look for your own cause in the matter. Step two, for me, is this incredible process that um, I was doing a version of, but later added to when I met Nathan Otto and Amber
Mm.
Otto, and they call it a consideration process. And I used to call it an existential question that
Mhm.
I'd be asking myself. But I loved, some of their distinctions around a
Mm.
consideration. And this to me is the biggest evolutionary tool I use in my life is I create a consideration. And let me say what that is. It's a usually a an existential question that you're asking yourself that has a built-in contradiction, like how can I create an environment for my partner that feels soft and supportive and appreciative, and at the same time be clear with him about the ways I'd like to see him develop, right? And you can fill in the blank with the ways that you want to develop. But how do I do these two things that are seemingly at odds? This false dichotomy or paradox of two things that don't quite go
Mhm.
together. How, the consideration that I form, and I literally form this into a question like that. And in forming that question, it becomes the thing that I look at as my lens. I'm looking at life through the lens of this consideration. So every interaction, every meditation, um, every person that I end up being near, I start asking them about this consideration.
Mhm.
And I end up having the most deep, spiritually uplifting, eye opening, insightful conversations that I've ever had that people love to participate in, because not everybody has the same flat sides that you do. And so you end up learning from all manner of people,
Mm.
right? And so I create a consideration. I recently created one, around a recurring trigger I kept having. And I had it with Bryan and I had it with people I collaborated with. And I had kind of convinced myself that people were basically going to let me down. They were going to fail to meet whatever expectations that I had, either that I had said explicitly or that were even hidden that I hadn't even shared, and that I couldn't count on people. I couldn't trust people. And so I was in a world of hurt around this, and realized that I kept having this, and the only common denominator was me. I was having this feeling of not being supported in the way I was wanting to be supported, because I was the kind of woman that, if there was 100% to do, I would do 200%. And I think I expected that people would really show up in that way. And that's a bit of an unreasonable expectation, especially if they have no idea what that means and how to
Mhm.
do that.
Mhm.
But anyway, I had set this up, and I had been getting so frustrated and triggered that I actually got assigned this consideration in a moment with Bryan. And he's like, who would you have to be if you believed that you were supported by the universe?
Mm.
And, what would you have to do different?
Yeah, and experienced being supported. Yeah, I really felt it.
Hmm. Hmm. And so this is one of many. I always have one or more of these considerations going in my life, because they not only are they evolutionary for me, because I begin changing who I am and how I be, and learning from everyone in my environment, um and but also they become infinitely entertaining. It's like candy for those of us that love to grow and evolve, which I imagine if you're on this webinar, you're one of those people. Then you get to really get juiced by your own growth and development here, and your ability to actually change your reality. And so, because I believed that I could change my reality through these considerations, that's what would happen.
Mhm.
And I think the key to a consideration is that you have to put down any assumptions, any preconceived notions about what support is, who you'd have to be. You have to
Mhm.
be open slate, willing to be wrong about everything, and to really reconsider it with fresh eyes. Your eyes are innocent and fresh, but still wise, right? And so you approach it as a consideration.
Mhm.
So remember, you first, step one, look for your own cause in the matter, and two, create the consideration around who you'd have to be giving yourself that standing
Yeah.
ovation. What is that question you should be in? And the key here is, oh, did you want to, you look like
Yeah,
you wanted to
I
add.
just was wanted to say, like, when you're forming that consideration, usually if you're doing something that you're not happy with, like let's say you're being too carefree and irresponsible, and the call is to be more responsible and be more on top of it. But the reason you're not doing that is because you're like, you want to have fun and you actually don't want to be all dull and boring, and you really, fun is really important to you. um, the consideration would be the contradiction would be in how do you have both? So
Yeah.
how can you be fun and carefree while also being responsible?
Hmm.
And then that consideration, if you do what Jennifer said, where you actually put aside your idea of what even fun and carefree mean, what responsible means, and really get into the worlds of everyone around you that has it differently than you so you can learn as much as possible about it, that's where it has the impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And what that does when you create that contradiction is you're aligning parts of you, because there are parts of you that feel one way and other parts of you that are the resourced parts that knows that there's truth in the other side. And when you create that and resolve that false dichotomy where you think they're on two opposite sides, you actually pop up. It's really an evolutionary move, because you pop up into a way of being that realizes that they're not at odds at all. That you
Mhm.
can be responsible and fun at the same time.
Mhm.
You can be courageous and prudent at the same time. You can
Mhm.
be strong and soft at the same time. And when you realize that both, you have access to both, and the parts of you that are worried about giving up on something get to relax, and then you can really change who you are. And so this is a really big aspect of repairing, is realizing that you can resolve and develop in a way that resolves that contradiction that seems to be running your life.
Mm.
So an important part of this consideration process is not pretending to decide until you really do. This is, let me say more, because that might have been a confusing statement. You need to admit to yourself when you haven't decided to be different, and really feel the impact of not deciding to be different. Until you feel that impact fully, you can't actually decide to change.
Mm.
Do you really let yourself feel what is the impact of being blamey and resentful just time and again, not just with Bryan, but with anyone else who might not have met an expectation that I had? And what is the ripple effect of that creating? And how is that becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy where I'm actually creating more of what I don't want? And so you have to actually let yourself feel the impact more fully. And most people, when they say they've decided to be different, actually just mean they wish to avoid the negative consequence of the future. So they're not actually wanting to be different. They're just wanting to avoid the consequence.
Yeah.
So I would want to have my expectations met and feel supported. I didn't want to, feel unsupported and have, not trust people. But did I actually want to do what it would take to be the kind of person where failing to meet an expectation or not supporting me was just unthinkable?
Mhm.
Like, where there was no oxygen for that, where you wouldn't be around me. How could I be in a way where
Yeah.
support would be the natural emergent way you would be with me,
Right.
or being trustable would just be so natural?
As long as everyone meets your expectations, you're happy to feel supported, right?
Right.
It's like what the other thing. Yeah.
So you really have to look, to really decide, you have to look honestly at the benefits of doing it the way you've been doing it, and truly to decide to go without the benefits. So what was the benefit of me, standing there with my failed expectations or not feeling like I could trust someone?
Mm.
And the benefit was like, I got to feel righteous. I got to feel um, subtly like I was superior, because I could say, well, I wouldn't have done it that
Mhm.
way. I would have met that expectation. So I had to
You got all the gold stars for being the
get gold
most to
star.
to
Mhm.
contribute, right? Because
Yeah,
you were working harder than everybody
right.
else, and there was always this kind of like, well, I had to do it in the end. So
The
it's
martyr.
the
"Oh,
hero.
well, if
Yeah.
they're not going to do it, I guess I will."
Yeah.
Secretly like loving being the superhero to
Mhm.
come in and save the day.
Yeah.
So you have to give up on some of those benefits. And so you have to both really decide by truly giving up on the benefits that you think are helping you, and really feeling the negative impacts that you're having. So that's a really important part of that step two of that consideration. So you really want to consider those things. So really write those down. Those are the things you're going to want to be considering. And now the third step is a really interesting step that I do that I encourage you to take on, which is I identify a power archetype. And and so, an archetype to me is a collection of um, ways of being, of a personality, of a set of values. Even an archetype often has a lot of personality, like a king or queen, or an archetype could be the priestess, or an archetype could be the the teacher or the guide, right? And these are all archetypes. And what you can do when you take on an archetype is you can look for one that doesn't have this problem that comes up. And so there was a time in my life where um, I wasn't feeling comfortable getting up in front of the stage with Bryan,
Hmm.
and really instead kind of complaining about being in the back of the room, passing out handouts or whatever, and not really feeling fulfilled. And as I went into the consideration of who I would have to be to feel comfortable being up on stage with Bryan, I took on the archetype of the queen. Right. And the queen doesn't get up in front and doesn't have low self esteem. She has very regal and beautiful self esteem and is caring about all her kingdom or queendom, and is really bringing that regality and that femininity and that self esteem as an embodiment of that, so that all of the men and women in the room have permission to bring their best selves, their highest esteemed selves. And so when you bring on like an archetype, a way of being where you have a sense of what it would look like, maybe it's a mentor or a guide, maybe it's even just a conglomeration of values or ways of being that you create on your own. I always meditate an archetype and take on being that archetype in those scenarios, because it gives me kind of creative license. And I can borrow the deep wisdom of that archetype that's been embedded in our cultural consciousness for, thousands of years. So anyway, that third step is a really powerful one to do. So just imagine the thing you're triggered about. Step one, look for the ways that you're at cause. Create a consideration around it, which is that contradictory statement that has both sides resolving that kind of conflict in you, and really deciding both by looking at the impact and giving up on some of the benefits that you're getting from the current way of being, and then identify a power archetype. So let's do those three.
Now, if you're a resolver and not native to repair,
Right.
then and you're trying this repair process, I also recommend that you build in some feedback checkpoints every
Mm.
2 weeks or
Yep.
every month, depends on how kind of big the issue is. We currently right now have a check-in on every 21st of the month, which is the anniversary of our wedding on the 21st. So 21st of every month, we sit down, we have a
Mm.
check-in, and I'm currently doing the consideration around integrity and the archetype of the Boy Scout to make sure that just Jennifer lives in an environment where she just trusts me completely, where everything, all the little things get done the way that I said they would. I've always been really good at delivering on the big promises, like I'll love you and have you feel amazingly cherished, and not so good on the little promises, like I promise to pick up eggs on the way home from work. So I'm working on that, and it's, by the way, it's much harder to remember to take the eggs home than it is to pick up the eggs on the way home than it is to remember to be the Eagle Scout, which is my archetype that I'm chose for this consideration.
Hmm. Hmm.
Anyway, so we just do this check in every 21st and ask some questions like, "How's that going? How do you feel this change?
We
Scale of
love,
1 to 10."
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say we love these scale of 1 to 10.
Yeah,
Like, how much do you trust that I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do? Scale
right.
of 1 to 10, four,
Yeah,
six, eight, whatever it is.
yeah. If you're native
Yeah.
to repair, you may or may not want that. Depends on whether it's something that actually is recurring. But if you're not native to repair, if you're more like me or you're a resolver, then I really recommend doing that check in so you can get feedback.
Yeah. And what I want to say about this, just imagine in your relationship if you were to incorporate what Bryan and I are saying around the things that are triggered, where every month, I mean, because these are often things that you're getting triggered about multiple times, you create a conversation with your partner. Say, okay, this thing that we usually get triggered about, how am I
How'd
doing
we
on
do?
that?
Yeah.
And we ask a series of 3 or 4 or 5 different questions about that. Some of them are numeric, so we try to be objective, like scale of 1 to 10, and then others are more qualitative, like, tell me more about how you're feeling, or what's a time when I was doing this really well, so that they have a map for what really well looks like. And what's a time when I was doing this, which was like a low light for the month,
Hmm.
right? Like here was the low point and here was the highlight. And so as you're sharing that, so if you'll just do this process with each other on one of the areas you're triggered, each of you picking the area that you're both most triggered on, and find out how they're doing 1 to 10. And then what's the highlight? What was the best part of the month where you were really shining and showing that integrity and trust, let's say, if that was the consideration. And then what was the lowest point that was really a mark kind of against
Yeah.
you in this area.
Yeah.
Then as you go month to month, you'll just notice that these things will start to resolve themselves. You
Yeah.
won't continue to be triggered about the same thing over and over. So, give that a try.
Yeah. Especially when your partner is proactively bringing to you a conversation they normally avoid, it just diffuses it, right? So much more powerful.
And this is the segue, because this is really that
Yeah.
third
Yeah.
part. Remember, we said there were three must do's in healthy
Conflict.
conflict. And this third one is kind of what we're saying. So go
Which is
ahead.
to maintain partnership. The third must do is to remember that you're in it together. Um, if your partner has an eating disorder, it's the partnership's eating disorder that you are co-creating and co-solving. If there's an anger problem, there's an anger problem in the partnership which you're co-creating and co-solving. So everything that you're doing together, when you get triggered, you tend to forget the partnership, and it becomes like a service provider where you're not doing this thing for me and I'm not doing this thing for you, and there's like a vendor relationship that forms, to use a business analogy, and I think that's really destructive. What you want to do as quickly as possible, remember that, oh, this is a partnership, we're creating this together. We're going to create the environment where it isn't a problem anymore, and then partner with each other to really seek to create the states and the environments where the stuff just doesn't happen, where you're naturally repaired already, and so the those resolutions are faster and faster.
Yeah. So those are the three. So just to recap, it's repair. I mean, sorry, resolve. Look, I even started with mine. Resolve, repair,
Yeah.
and keep partnership. So
Yes.
those
Yes.
are the three main ones. And then there are three steps to the first two.
Yeah.
So, and then that partnering is us doing these processes together where we really have a conscious conversation about each of these so that every month, we're getting better and better. We don't go a month of with any of these where the numbers aren't rising, where our experience isn't getting better and better, because we really are committed to it. So really put some of this stuff in practice. And we know that saying some of this in theory is only part of helping you through this, and the next part of it is really actually diving in and working on it, with people that can give you kind of an outside perspective. And what we find is that when you try to resolve some of this on your own, that you try to work out your problems at the level of the problem, and the solutions to be immersed in an environment where these problems can't take hold because they rely on false limiting beliefs that are simply not held by the environment. And so one of the issues that we see for people when they're trying to address the issues, and as we would call it, rewrite their relationship DNA, is they get stuck because they're inside the problem. And while you're inside it, it's really hard to resolve. It's really hard to resolve a trigger when you're in that state. And it sometimes can be hard to even work on repair or work on apology or resolution from the state that you're in.
Mhm.
And so what we found is that the solution is to do a lot less of what most therapists will have you do, and even what most relationship books will have you do. I mean, we've read dozens of them at this point. They often have you dive deeper into the muck. And so you pay for years of therapy,
Mm.
talking about everything that happened in your childhood, and kind of cementing for you why you have an insecure attachment and why you're justified in having that insecure attachment, and
Right.
how, when your mom looked away and you fell, that you made it mean that the world was unsafe and women were unsafe. And so now we've got all the whys, to kind of hold you into the problem. And what Brian and I have found is that there's a series of conversations and practices that are evolutionary practices that can pop you out of the very thing that you are embroiled in, and that you actually have to raise the conversations and raise the state of the relationship that you're in, not dive deeper into it. And we've developed a series of these practices and conversations. This is one of many,
Mhm.
that we've developed. And it does really require you to raise out of it.
But you have to also be in an environment where you really are immersed in a situation where the problems can't take hold, because the problems rely on these false limiting beliefs
Yeah.
that are simply not held by a high vibration environment. And that's why we've created exactly that kind of environment for you at the upcoming Evolving Love Retreat. And if it's all right with you, we'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Evolving Love Retreat and how it could totally transform your love relationship. So we want to take your questions, and we would love to, on this call, have an opportunity to upgrade your repair process and your resolution process on a real situation in your relationship. So be thinking about what that is. And then before we get to some calls, we want to talk to you a little bit about this retreat.
Yeah, yeah, and what I want to say is that you're often the least qualified to be able to see what those limiting beliefs are, see what your relationship DNA is, because, and your partner is often not very qualified because they're being triggered equally with their symmetry around it. And so you both are kind of creating this interlocking structure that keeps you stuck. And one of the biggest benefits that you could invest in is having an outside perspective, people that have kind of figured out how to raise you out of those conversations and give you kind of a translator experience where each of you can translate. You know, when you have really good mentors or guides around relationship, you can translate for one another such that you can even hear what your partner is actually saying, and I can hear what the other person is saying. And when you have that external voice that can keep impartiality and really pull you out instead of letting you get enmeshed, it can make all the difference in the world. And really letting yourself experience that firsthand, I think, is going to have a bigger impact on the quality of your life than anything else that you can do. So, what we've done is we've developed this evolving love retreat because it's really came out of a dream that we've had, a dream of actually diving in deeply in a way that we can't do on a webinar, where we're going in like surgeons or like maybe geneticists to rewrite your very relationship DNA so that you can embody your ideal love story. And we know that it can be done. We know what the practices are that can give you the kind of relationship that you are proud of, the kind of relationship that other people look to. And we've created this retreat format where we can dive very, very deeply in. And so this retreat we've designed is really for, anyone that is curious about evolving love, evolving the way that they do love. So it's for singles, singles that are, you know, wanting to get off on the right foot. Some people are saying, oh, wait, is this just for couples? And I say, no, no, no. If I only could get a hold of people in there when they were single so that we could give them these practices so that the very next relationship they were in, they actually started it
It's
the
so
right way
so much easier.
versus unwinding the bad habits and patterns and triggers.
Yeah.
If you can set the context of your relationship from the beginning, you are setting yourself up for an incredible relationship where you get to lead the way in evolving love. And so, if you're a single that's interested in evolving your love, this is an incredible retreat for you. It's also, though, for couples in trouble. If you are self-identify as someone who, you're in the relationship, you want to be in the relationship, you want the love to work, but you recognize that the triggers are running the show and that you really do want to rewrite some of that DNA. If you're a couple in trouble, this is a great place. This retreat is a great place for us to use some of what's coming up in your relationship, use our kind of guidance and translation to help you once and for all resolve some of the things that are coming up for you. And then once you resolve them, because that's just the first step, and once you repair them, then it's how do you create a context for an even more evolutionary relationship? And that isn't done by accident. That's a deliberate process that we will teach you in our 3-day retreat. So that's, couples in trouble. We love it. We love having you there because you give us really good stuff to work with that everyone can relate to. I guarantee you, if you're one of these couples, that the issues you're having are the ones that all the people in the room have had or are having. So that's it's also for couples in trouble. And then if you're a couple in bliss, and you have an incredible relationship, but you know the value of really investing in keeping that relationship fresh and alive and radiant and hot and sexy and fun, and have it be the center point of your evolution, then you are going to love this retreat. So really, singles, couples in trouble, or even couples in bliss, this is really designed for that because it's really an evolutionary conversation that we want all of us to be in. So that's really who it's for.
Hmm.
And so,
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the things that you'll learn. We're going to practice together the 7 evolutionary conversations that will raise the consciousness really of your relationship and of you in it. And you'll really learn those practices, and we're going to practice them in real time together. Some of them are conversations, some of them are embodiment practices. They're things that we can do together that will just change the DNA, like Jennifer was saying, of your relationship. You're going to have a chance to dissolve some of these codependent patterns. You may not like thinking of them as codependent, but whether you call it anxious or avoidant or insecurely attached or
Fused or
fused or
connected. Yeah.
depending on all of the terminology that and the latest book you read, you'll recognize in yourself the part of you that's lacking, the part of you that doesn't feel fulfilled without relying on your partner's state, or the part of you that gets too nervous or unsettled feeling when your partner gets too close. And you'll get to actually dissolve that and figure out how to be energetically in balance with your partner in a powerful way. Um, what else are they going to learn here? Like there's, there's 3 things that you can say to your partner that will instantly make them supportive. And we'll go through those. You're going to learn uh, what to do again when you're triggered. We'll go into the 3 things that we covered in this
Yeah,
webinar.
we'll actually take you through the process live and in real time and have you do some really revolutionary things that we've come up with, having you be partnered with people that aren't your partner, to help you
Right.
resolve that. We've got a really, really incredible process that we've designed for that. And then so that when you do get back with your partner, yeah, you've got the tools in place
So
to really rewrite that DNA. So we're going to go through that. And then we're going to, teach you how to have an evolutionary context for your relationship, a third pole that's really the driving force for, rather than de-evolution and conflict, to your own growth. And it's an incredibly fun and beautiful process. We'll probably have a movie night. We've got all sorts of things planned for you.
We've got the monogamous and the open relationship playbooks for how to keep your relationship super sexy and drama free. That's hot stuff right there.
Yeah. And then we have the 10 ways to go from ordinary relationship to extraordinary relationship. And so we're going to dive deeply into some of those and give you that guide as well. So let's talk a little bit about the logistics of this. So what we've done, because we've been teaching and training people for years to transform themselves. And what we noticed is that when you live together in the same place, where you're not coming and going to a hotel or a ballroom, or, coming and going just for a day or a few hours, we noticed that the level of depth and authenticity and truth and courage varies dramatically. And so we decided we weren't going to do a relationship retreat unless we could really be on retreat. And so what we've done is found the most epically beautiful place you could possibly imagine. I'm so excited about the where. It's in South Lake Tahoe. It's a 12,000 square foot mansion that we found on 7 acres, and right at the bottom of that Lake Tahoe area. And it sleeps 30 people, many, many, many private bedrooms. We've got incredible caterers making us amazing food while we're there. And so just the experience of being at this retreat, just the experience of dialoguing with a bunch of incredible people. We've already got some extraordinary
really
folks
amazing people
that are super conscious and super advanced in the area of love, that are participants in this so far, just in the little bit that we've already advertised it. So you'll be surrounded by some really extraordinary folks in just this epic vacation home.
That's right.
So just that for 4 days, 3.5, 4 days is a benefit in of itself. Just you putting your money where your mouth is by saying, I'm going to invest in us and our love story, or in me and my ability to evolve my own ability to be in a love story at this epic place. You can't help but be transformed. So that's part of it. And it's May 5th through 8th, starts Thursday night. We have a welcome dinner and an opening. And then Friday and Saturday, all day, we're going to be going. And then Sunday, we'll have about a half day together. We're going to feed you beautiful meals, May 5th through 8th, in this Tahoe area. People that sign up first will get first dibs on bedrooms. Many of them are private. There are a few of them are shared. So if this is something that you are wanting to dive into with us, we'd be honored to have you, and you want to register soon.
That's right. And it's really
It's
reasonable for what you're getting for this incredible vacation location, luxury location. It's
gourmet meals every
yeah,
day.
gourmet
Yeah,
meals
yeah.
3 times a day, plus the 3 nights and 4 days at this location.
A sauna, a pool, a hot tub, a
Yeah.
spa, a pool table, a theater,
And
hiking trails.
the
It's really
price is only
gorgeous.
$3,500 for couples,
It's for two people.
or $2,500 for a single. And so if you're single, you go to 2,500, and couples, it's only $3,500.
hmm And so, what we want to do for those of you that are on this webinar, I told you that there would be something at the end that
Yeah.
we would bonus. And so, our bonus at the end is that you get two things. You get a $500 off discount.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm going to tell you how to get that discount in a minute, but you also will get a 90-minute session with us. Now, we normally charge for our coaching. Bryan charges $3,500 a month for his coaching. I
Mhm.
charge about $2,500 a month for my coaching. You're going to get a 90-minute session with us, just laser guided, just you and us. And if you're in a couple, we can do both of you together if you'd
Mhm.
like, but you'll get that as a VIP package. And that's worth, at least $500 as for a relationship session, and more if you consider what we normally charge for our training. So we're going to give you that bonus, and we're going to give you a discount of 500 off. And the 500 off is we have a special discount code. So this is where you really need to write this down.
That's right.
And the discount code, because you'll have to put this in, is all capital letters: love our friends 16. Love our friends 16. We've got the link on the page. You'll see it to the right. Go ahead and click it to register or to look at it and find out more. But if you put Love Our Friends 16, you're going to get the 500 off, and you're going to get that free session. But that free session, there's a limited. We can't give that to everybody that signs up. We're going to give that to, how many
The
did we
first
say?
5.
The first 5 people that sign up are going to get that 90-minute session. Now, you can still get a session with us if you want. But the first 5 people that sign up after this webinar are going to get it for free. So we just want to really stack the deck in your favor. And we love these conversations. We can move mountains in a conversation like this. And if you'll give us 3 days, we can totally rewrite your relationship. So we're really excited about this retreat. It's a dream of ours to do this together. With that,
Yeah, so thank you. Go right.
let's end it.
Yeah, we want you to also. You can go right now to um, uh, recodelive.com/, evolving love retreat. Is that right? Am I saying that right?
Mm-hmm.
Recodelive.com/evolving love retreat, and find out more about it. You can also sign up for a call with us if you have any questions.
Well, you hit the register button on the right.
And you can hear the yes.
And then Jennifer, oh yeah, do we talk about the call?
Sure, go ahead.
And then if you're in the camp of wanting to do this, don't wait, because for the next 24 to 48 hours, you're going to have access to the $500 discount and the session with us. And so go ahead and register for that. So you'd click the register now button. If you're in the camp of thinking about it, not quite sure, maybe you have some questions, go to the page. You're going to see a frequently asked questions. So you might see a lot of your questions answered. But if you still have questions after that and are wondering and would really like some support in making the choice, you can go to and have a 30-minute call with me. And on that call, we'll apply some of what we talked about today. We'll look at your situation in particular. You're going to get a lot of benefit even just from us talking about your love and your relationship. And you can actually then get all your questions answered, and I'll help you make sure that you can decide. So that is at jennifersrussell.com/love call. jennifersrussell.com/love call. So either hit the button on the right if you're ready and you know it, or you want to send it to your partner, show them the link. But if you want to call, go ahead to jennifersrussell.com/love call. So we've gone a little bit over today.
Yep, we're a little bit over time.
If you guys have any questions, we'll stay on for a bit. You hit the request to speak button. It looks like a hand.
That's right.
And you can raise your hand, and we can take some questions. You can also chat us your questions. And it looks like we might have a few people chatting.
Yep. So we have my triggers drive me to being angry and being right. Yes, I
Mm-hmm.
understand.
Oh
My
yeah.
partner avoids conflict generally. So most of the time we don't solve issues but work around them.
Yeah.
How can we create this resolution space in our relationship?
Oh, it's so common. Oh, I'm so glad you wrote that, Sandra. And if anyone else has questions, just go ahead and hit the request to speak, and we'll get you on. But this is one of the most common things
Yeah.
that we see, that one partner is conflict avoidant, the other one gets triggered. There's usually one of each, right? There's the anxious and the avoidant type if you followed secure attachment theory.
Mhm.
And I know for a while in our relationship, we both felt like that. We never actually worked on the issues because we
Mhm.
couldn't really resolve them. So
I didn't
how
realize that actually. I thought we were working on the issues. I found out later that that was
Well,
the
that was
case.
my
Yeah,
experience.
exactly.
See, my experience was Sandra's
Yeah.
experience. So let's give Sandra a
Well,
little bit about how she can create that resolution space in her relationship.
yeah. So, first of all, it sounds like that your partner is more likely to specialize in resolution, and you are more likely to specialize in repair. And so, the thing I would do to start is to interview your partner, Sandra, about how he would like or she would like you to um, handle it when you're upset. Give uh, uh, treat it like you're a reporter. Say, okay, let's say that I'm upset. Something has gone wrong. What would be the ideal way for me to bring that to your attention? How can I do it in a way that would feel good to you? And take notes and do as much as you can to follow the how that your partner would prefer to communicate, but the what that you want to communicate. Because if your partner's avoiding conflict and you have him, I'm going to assume, be in charge of what is communicated, maybe the stuff will never get brought up and never resolved. But if we leave the how to communicate up to you, it's going to be kind of righteous and angry, which is not how. So, um, uh, I would see if you can get an agreement whether or not you bring it up could be up to you, but how you bring it up could be up to him. And then do your own consideration, like Jennifer was talking about what is the archetype that would represent the kind of person that could bring those issues up in a very peaceful and harmonious way.
Yeah, I do the theater exercise, Sandra. As what I do is I fade out the background and look at how I'm responding. And you said that your triggers tend to drive you to being angry and being right. That's what you wrote in the chat window, and I watch myself doing that same thing. I know that one really well, being angry and being right. um, and I play the movie and look at, well, how would I want to respond? What would have me stand with innovation that's still aligned with my values? So my values wouldn't be to be a pushover and to give up on things that I value, and
Or to be
to let
conflict
him
avoidant.
totally off
Yeah,
the hook for
yeah.
something that I think would be a line of his development and good for him to grow. But I also am not trying to force him to be me, right? So you need to know the difference between the triggers that are you wanting your partner to be like you, and the triggers that are about you actually seeing them being a better version of themselves and wanting to be a stand for their evolution because it's on the path they want to evolve towards. And so I look at, okay, so what how do I have to be to have me having a standing ovation? Who would I have to become? What's the consideration I need to be in, such that that behavior is what emerges in my sphere? So I don't know what he does that makes you angry, but who would you have to be in order for that behavior, the one that you're wanting instead of whatever you're having, to be the natural way for him to be? If it's trustable, if it's supportive, if it's listening to you. I don't know what your issue is, but there is a way you could be where that would be natural. And so look at what that consideration would be. Do a consideration with yourself. Start asking everybody, hey, how do you create this behavior all around you? I notice that you may have this differently than I do. How do you create? For me, it was about, do you feel supported in your life? You do? Well, how do you create that feeling of
Mhm.
support? Like, what are you doing? And you'll start to find out what it is that you're doing differently than what they're doing. And you'll be able to start to use some of that. And, and so that is an incredible process to go through. If I was talking to your partner, I would ask them, about ways that they could um, help your state in that.
Yeah.
So if I was talking to whoever is with Sandra, I'd say, okay, so if she's getting angry and being right, what are the things that you know will restore her state to one where she can actually relax and have her critter brain and her fight or flight response realize that it's safe, it's okay.
which is going to be in the neighborhood of being willing to feel it, like
Mm-hmm.
not running away from it.
Yeah.
But we're almost out of time. I just want to
Should we
answer
do
this one,
Brienne's?
yeah, this one
Yeah, we
last
got to
question
get to
because this is
Brienne's.
such a good one. How often do you give yourself physical space when you are severely triggered, or do you always talk it through? This is talk it through. It's a great question. So I did an experiment because just so happens that taking space while in an unhappy place happens to be one of Jennifer's pet peeves. It happens to be a trigger itself. Not all people are triggered by that, but Jennifer happens to be. So
Yeah, it's like, don't leave me. We're in the middle of
yeah,
this thing and
exactly.
I'm raw and I'm sad and I'm hurt. How dare you leave me in this moment? The worst moment you could possibly leave me, like abandon, reject me, like go away.
So
You know,
I
I want us to stay together until we've figured it out. We've repaired it.
I asked for it to be okay for me to take space as
Yeah.
long as, and she had a request that I said that I was taking space for the purpose of cooling off so that I could come back more resourced and whatever. And so I got all that agreement. I was very proud. And I took my space and I started to keep track of the time that I took and the time that the resolution took. Uh, and what I noticed was that it was the exact same after I had taken space, no matter how much space I took. So me taking space was actually kind of a subtle way of punishing Jennifer and just having her stew in bad feelings and me not having to feel them. Um, and so it took us between 20 to 40 minutes to resolve if I didn't take space. And if I took a space for another 20 minutes, I'd take space for 20 minutes and came back, and it took between 20 and 40 minutes to resolve after. So I was like, well, I'm just delaying pain. I'm just creating more pain. There's not, I actually don't need to take space. All I need to do is to take one breath and locate in myself the source of love that's in me, realize I'm okay, and then go forward.
Mm-hmm. So your recommendation is not to take space.
Yeah, I would say,
That's a controversial
yeah, I would
recommendation,
say
actually.
generally you don't. If you think you need to take space, you don't. And although I would be in favor of as a partnership together experimenting with using space in a way that was helpful, but I would have it be a collaborative. Like, hey, what do you think about space? Like, how could we use taking space to make it good for us? And if it's a collaboration, then I think it could work for some couples.
Yeah, I want to add to this because I think there's some nuance here that might be misunderstood. Um, when you're creating space to punish your partner, we don't recommend doing that, and you have to be really self-aware to realize what the difference is of whether the taking of space is you literally needing to kind of restore your energy, your food, your rest so that you are physically in the space that can bring more resources to the kind of to the fore so that you can actually have the conversation in a literally a more resource state by adjusting your sleep, your food, your energy. Like that to me would be the legitimate request of space. You haven't, slept, you haven't eaten, you're tired, you're fatigued, it's that's a recipe for a very difficult conversation. And I think if either of you recognize that you're actually physically depleted and that's affecting you emotionally because those systems are completely connected, I think that's a good use of space.
Could be.
If you're taking space in order to punish your partner, I think that's always goes badly because your partner can feel that that's what you're doing. And I would just stick it out and actually get the conversation to the next point and run through some of the repair and resolution processes that we recommended. So that's kind of my nuance on it. I actually would take space in the case of the depletion and wouldn't take space in the case of punishment.
I just bet that you need less of it than you think.
Yes.
That actually is
Yes.
less
You're
awful.
more resilient
Yeah.
than you give yourself credit for.
So we're totally out of time. Just really quickly, this is the only Evolving Love retreat that's scheduled. We don't.
Someone else asked, are you going to do this
Yeah.
again? We
So
don't
this
have it
is
calendared. I mean,
this is
the
it.
future could hold something
Yeah,
else, but
it's
it's not
possible, but
on the calendar.
we're not. Yeah, we're not currently planning it,
Uh-huh.
and there will be a replay of this so
Webinar.
that you can watch it, this webinar, so you can watch it with your partner and decide if you guys want to join us. And please click the link now and just talk with us about it. See if it's right for you. And if you know you want to jump in, then sign up now and get that $500 discount. Um, and it's been just such a pleasure to sit here and talk to you. And we love you. We love. We love each other, and we can't wait
Mm.
to see more of you in the
Yeah,
future.
we can't wait to evolve love with you.
Yeah.
And there's magic we can do when we have you actually in front of us. It's harder to do through a screen, but really, really epic things that we can do together. So take us up on that. Much, much love to you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the delay and staying on. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and hopefully we will see you soon. Good night.
Ciao.